the balance sheet gives you a snapshot, cross-section snapshot of the firm's net worth. So it's a value or a measure or an image, let's say, of the firm's health in the present. Okay? Whereas profit and loss statements refer to the past, a specific period in the past, so trading history could be over a term or a whole year, so it really depends on the period that these statements refer to, okay? And cash flow forecast, like the word says, it basically focuses on the future, so it's the expected income and expenditures of the firm. So you do look for different things in those three different, let's say, documents, okay? One referring to the present, one shows you the how the firm has been going in the past up until now, and the other one helps you to assess the cash flow in the future. Now this is sort of the basic kind of equation. The balance sheet has to balance, as you read in your book. So basically it expresses this kind of concept that all your liabilities, which is the money that you owe to others, if you add this to your equity, it should equal your assets, which is all your short-term and long-term, let's say, assets, which we call current and non-current assets, okay? Plus any stock that you have, short-term and longer-term assets, okay? Now, has anyone heard of this concept of current assets and non-current assets? People that have studied accounting, can you just raise your hand so I can get an idea? So if we look at a balance sheet and the side of it, one side of it that refers, let's say, to the assets, so this column here, okay? When we refer to current assets, we basically mean assets that can be quickly turned into cash. So it's cash and cash equivalent. Okay, and this here gives you a few examples. Now, why would accounts receivable, what would we be referring to with this word? Why is this a current asset? Anyone? Any of the accounting people or anybody else wants to give it a go?
Because people own your money.
Yep. So you expect to be receiving that money very soon. It's as if you basically have it in your pocket for the purpose of this statement, okay? So it's almost as if you have, like you have this cash, 260,000, you also have accounts receivable of 580,000. So for the purpose of this statement, they are considered cash equivalents, okay? Inventory, all these things, you have prepaid expenses, another one. So you see, I've already paid these expenses, therefore, it's almost like cash equivalent. You have prepaid them, you're not going to be paying them in this next, let's say, period. So it's as if this money has already been given. So it's as if you are now expecting part of it back, if that makes sense. Non-current assets are longer term, let's say assets that it's not quickly turned into cash. So any of the equipment that you have, any of the furniture, any of your properties, like physical buildings. And it's in the balance sheet, it's pretty straightforward because they're all listed under usually the title of current or non-current assets. So for the purpose of this unit, you will not actually be asked to classify things under the specific category, okay? So it will be very clearly visible what everything is. So it's up to you to then use that information in the way that we will discuss further on. Okay, liabilities. In a similar sense to current assets and non-current assets, you have current and non-current liabilities. So you might have money that is owed to others that is due to be paid in the short term, okay? Accounts payable, any expenses that you have accrued, your income tax, for example, all these things that are on the slide, okay? And then non-current liabilities, which is money that you owe but will not be paid in this normal operating cycle, okay? What is sort of missing from this? What kind of assets, let's say, is not included in this? So if we go back to the initial statement that I made, that it gives you the financial health of the business. So you look at your assets and liabilities, you can calculate the net, let's say, equity, okay? So say you, based on this, you sell this business today. Would these figures actually give you exactly what you will be making, if that makes sense? So do you actually realize that this is what the business is worth on paper? It's not the real value of the business. Does that make sense? What are the kind of assets, let's say, that are not included in the balance sheet? Yes?
Non-tangible assets, for example, trademarks or patents.
Yep, your brand equity, okay, your intellectual property. So although this is a very useful document, okay, to make you consider the financial health of the business, there's obviously aspects of the business worth that are not included in this, okay, just so you're clear. So this is basically, we can use this information, as we will do later on when we talk about business valuation, to get a basic valuation of the business that does not equate to the actual market value of any business. Okay? Now this is just a graphic display, and I will come back to this when we are talking about the different ratios, okay, which shows you, for example, for this particular case, the comparison of current fixed assets and then the current current and non-current assets, which is just these, and then current and non-current liabilities, okay? Does anyone have any sort of comments just by looking at this? Something that you sort of notice that you think it's, let's say, good or not good for this firm? Any of the accounting people? Something that you pick up, let's say, straight away?
It's an unbalanced firm, I guess, because the current assets made up for a large portion of the asset side of the balance sheet.
That's correct. Which can be a bit of an issue, but what else is, let's say, more of a pending problem? Yes?
Current ratio would be really high because liabilities are 600,000 and assets are
Current assets, so you can actually pay your current liabilities with your current assets. It's not a bad thing. Okay, you think it's a high ratio? Okay, we'll come back to this slide afterwards, and maybe then we can sort of reflect on this a bit with some different sort of into perspective. Okay, profit and loss statement. Now, this slide, which I basically borrowed this from someone, this equation, I just want to make it clear to you that it doesn't sort of make sense from a mathematical point of view. So I'm not trying to say that if you take your sales and you deduct your cost of goods sold, then you get the gross profit. Then it should be a different line underneath that says if you take your gross profit and you take away the overhead costs, you end up with your net profit. Okay? So this should not be one straight line. It does not make sense like that. So make a note in your notes, or if you don't have them printed, just make a note, okay? So basically what this is trying to say, it just gives you the progression of what you see in a profit and loss statement, okay? The order by which these things appear and how you end up having your sales revenue at the top and at the bottom the net profit and the kinds of things in between, okay? But it's not a mathematical equation per se. So what we need to remember from this is that your variable costs, can anyone explain to us what the variable costs are? Give you an example here, direct labor and materials. So costs that depend are varied depending on the amount of sales that you do. So costs that are directly related to the amount of sales that you do, those variable costs, if you deduct them from your sales, then you get a very important figure which we call the gross profit. And as it says here, it's your profit before allocation of any overhead costs, any fixed costs, okay, such as these. Now, when you then take your gross profit, so from your original profit, you have already deducted your variable costs, you get your gross. From the gross, then you deduct all your fixed costs, and you end up with your net profit. And EBIT means earnings before interest and tax, okay? So then if you deduct from this in interest and tax, you end up with your final net income, which is exactly what this slide is all about, okay? So it calculates your gross profit margin, 66.7%, okay? So this is basically 1 million divided by 1,500. And the earning before interest and tax 350,000, and then you can get your net profit margin by dividing this by 1.5 million. Okay? So 2 key ratios here. Fairly straightforward. Now what this slide is trying to say is that what we always need to keep in mind is that there is a cycle, the working capital cycle as we call it. So all these things, or the money that we do see typically in your profit and loss statement, it does not happen simultaneously, okay? It's over a period of time. So money will come to you at a different time than when you actually have to pay, okay, your expenses. So it's, I guess, common sense. It makes sense that you make your purchases, so you incur some costs there, okay? Then you have your production costs, then you have your selling and distribution costs, and eventually you have your sales receipts. Now, it does depend, because in some industries, let's say, you might get the sales money in first before you actually commission the production of the product, let's say, okay? Or part of that money. So this is not to say that in every business it is exactly like that, but generally that there is this lag of time before when you're actually incurring the expense and when you are getting your money from the sale of those particular products, okay? So what does that mean? Why is this important, do you think? Why is this important? To understand that it is profitable. Yeah. So you might have a very good, let's say, business plan or a very good product that eventually, if you do sell this product, you are going to make profit, but you can basically run out of money in this process of production, selling and distribution, if that makes sense. And quite a few small businesses do face challenges that have to do with cash flow. You probably hear it from almost any, business person you hear, small business owner. Cash flow is an issue, especially in a market that is tight, like today's market, in terms of achieving, basically, getting loans and money from banks. Therefore, it's important to understand your business and the ratios and the financial ratios that we will be referring to, the current ratios, which gives you an indication of the health of your business, okay? And making those cash flow projections so you actually know where you're heading to. So the profit and loss statement is not on its own able to show you whether your business is viable or not going forward, especially if you are into a process of growth or rapid growth, okay? Okay, this just gives you some of the measures that will assess you in looking at these issues, and there's a lot of information on this in your book. Now, what I wanted to focus on is these, some of these ratios. So, from the balance sheet, one of the key ratios that we look at is the debt to equity ratio. Okay, do you have enough equity to finance your debt? And as it says here, it should be less than 1. Okay, the current ratio should be greater than 2. Now, there is a little mistake there where it says current ratio, from what I can see. Can anyone pinpoint to that? Yeah, should be divided. Should be current assets divided current liabilities, okay? So, if I just go back to this slide, So if we look at our current assets and current liabilities, like your fellow student said at the back, it is more, your current assets more than the current liabilities, but still, it's nowhere near to 2, okay? And also if we look at debt to equity ratios, there is a major issue there. Okay, so let's do a little bit of calculations. This is very, very straightforward. So can you just write down debt, equity, and just calculate the debt to equity ratio, which we've already done, I think, for this, and then your current ratio. Okay. Anyone ready to offer their opinion? Debt to equity ratio? How much is your debt in this business? Anyone? Sorry? 600 plus? Yeah, which is your mortgages, okay? So it's 700. 600 plus 100,000, 700,000. And then your equity is clearly stated? 300. So your debt to equity ratio is 2.33. Yeah. And then your current assets, it's there, 970. Your current liabilities, 600. So what's your current ratio?
1.616.
Yeah, 1.6. Okay. So like we said, debt to equity should be less than 1. Okay. Suggesting that this firm may have too much debt. Okay. And then current assets, the current liability is 1.62. So as your fellow student said, they can be serviced. However, it should, based on the theoretical numbers that we have, the recommendation, let's say, for a financially healthy business should be greater than 2. Okay. So this does not necessarily mean anything. It may depend on the type of the business yet again, but it's just an indicator that there might be, especially in combination with the problematic debt to equity ratio, you should come up with it will flag that there might be issues here with the financial health of this business, okay? So whereas you will not be asked, let's say, to put a statement like this together, you might be asked to interpret what it means, just like we've done here. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, let's do this one now. This is a profit and loss statement. Okay, so it's got your revenues, it's got operating expenses, okay, which is the cost of goods sold, which we said is your variable costs, and then it's got your gross profit. So what would be your gross profit margin? Anyone? Yes, 2/3, 66.7%. Yep. So you divide 1 million by 1,500,000. It's actually in one of the previous slides, I'm pretty sure. And then What's your net profit margin? I've circled the net income at the bottom. What would that be? You can use, if you don't have a calculator, you can use your phones. It's, sorry, anyone? You divide 350 by 1,500,000 and you get,
23.3.
oops, yeah. Okay. I don't even have it, the 23.3 here, it's one of your previous slides, okay? Now, the issue here is that this does not actually tell you much when it comes to profit and loss statements. What we would normally do, or what they do in accounting, is you have to compare the statements of at least 3 years in a row to be able to see whether the business is heading in the right direction or not, how these ratios are changing, okay? And what they also do quite often in accounting is sort of extrapolate in the future when they're making forecasts, okay, which can be quite risky in a real life scenario situation. So be wary of that, okay? In real life, when you run your own business, you cannot extrapolate with from today's profit and loss statement what will happen in 5 years' time, okay? Now, what's the important thing from a practical perspective? That you actually monitor all your cash flows and these important financial measures, okay? The ones that are more relevant to your business, and to make sure that decision makers understand them, okay? And whether or not they're used for decision making, that sometimes makes the difference from a firm that will trade successfully to one that will encounter suddenly financial problems, okay? And if you do have a very good accountant, they should, even if the owners do not necessarily understand them, if they have a good accountant, so this applies to accounting students in this class, okay? The extended service that you can provide to your clients is exactly that, okay? Instead of just preparing their, accounts or looking after their accounts, you have to also do this function for them, and this is how you can add value to your clients, okay? And that's where the business obviously is heading, or I guess the service is heading, okay? Now I'm just going to run a little video from TerraCycle, which is actually quite entertaining in that it actually shows you how some small businesses that can grow pretty quickly and can be quite successful, how completely out of control they can actually be from the financial perspective, so that all the risks that are lurking there in the background until you actually get someone to become more in control. Let's have a look at this video.
Restaurant environments, and I think the Dunkin' Donuts bring out.
Might can't with anything that we what second measure, what is the process. The difficult is who much to keep it. Because the idea was
The whole cut from mile from I think that was
the CFO.
the pool next year, billion, and relatively speaking, okay, I need to bring some help in.
Hi, the CFO. May I say that? Well, I'm the chief financial officer, but because we're a small company, that means I do pretty much everything that's involved with the money, from cutting the checks to going through the drive-through window at the bank and depositing checks. I run the candy machine because that involves money. I do a lot of reporting for the board and for investors. And we also do a lot of decision support, providing feedback on how a product is selling or what the costs are, whether we should release space or something like that. When Tom hired me, he mentioned that he needed a CFO, and I don't actually think he had any idea what a CFO would even do. One of the first things that I discovered that I had to remedy, and was sort of my first step toward becoming one of the more unpopular people here at TerraCycle, was that 3 employees had debit cards that linked directly to the company's checking account. that they were using for expenses. And no one was abusing them, but there was just no record keeping. I mean, no one really had a sense as to how much money was in the checking account, whether or not the purchase that they were making was going to have any impact on that. When the purchase was made, what it would be coded to. I mean, it was just a free-for-all. Yeah, we had a lot of past due bills, bank reconciliations that hadn't been done. We had no idea how much the product we were making was costing us to make. A lot of the data had been put into the accounting system by a well-meaning intern who had double-entered a lot of it. There were boxes of receipts that had piled up from, travel and whatever. I mean, it was, I found in a drawer a bunch of W-2s that hadn't been sent out because Social Security numbers hadn't matched. I mean, just basically anything that had been a problem for anyone up to that point in time had been thrown into a drawer. And when I found the drawer, that became part of my job. One of the first things that I did was I worked a lot with the head of production to try to get a handle on what we were using in our production process and what we still had in the warehouse, so that we could actually figure out what we were paying to make our product. And one of the reasons that had been very difficult is that everything that had come in up to that date had been charged directly to cost of goods sold. So if you bought, let's say, enough bottles to make, let's say, 100,000 bottles of product, on that day you would charge the whole $100,000 to product, even if you'd only sold one of those bottles. So it was impossible to get a really good measure for what the actual costs associated with our process were. And there was definitely a sense here that because we were making product out of garbage, it wasn't costing us anything. And that was definitely not true. We learn from our mistakes.
I guess I was about the second.
No? Okay. So, very interesting. What does that tell us? What did they actually, what were the very unorthodox things that they did before this CFO was appointed?
Basically, nobody knew who was going to spend what on what for what purpose and all that.
They were just running the business, and because money was coming in and it was more than the money going out, basically they kept going. But there's quite a bit of risk of, going bust in this way. What else were they actually not doing, or she actually implemented, which is extremely important based on the things that we are discussing? Yeah, it's a general statement, obviously, yeah, record keeping. Anything else? Yep. Exactly, yeah. So it's a mix of, liability and control. And, so there was obviously only two or three operators. It was a small business, so they basically, went along. But these things do happen in real life. Okay, this is why I'm showing you this, because I just wanted to register. It's not just what we are saying in this, amphitheater. There are small businesses that run like that, and suddenly an employee walks away and they've, taken a large sum of money with them, or money goes missing, and products go missing, things like that do happen. What's the other issue in terms of financial control that she instigated, which it's very important? I was talking about this towards the end.
So I actually allocated the cost specifically to the point of sale.
Exactly. Okay. And we will talk about breaking in the next, let's say, this topic that we will touch on. But it's very important not to only know what your costs are, but how that relates to production. Okay? How much is variable, how much is fixed, and if you have a number of different lines of products, which is what she was potentially trying to do, also to assess which products are more viable than others. So managerial accounting, it's it's not just record keeping for the purpose of the tax office. It can really assist you to understand what part of your business is profitable and which part is not. And you may actually find walking into a business that there's a lot of things that they do which is actually not profitable or not contributing to their bottom line, and they just do it, or even services, they might be offering a number of services, and some of them they're losing money. Is that acceptable, you think? Anyone? Let's say you are a small business owner, you have a product and some services on top of that, in terms of customer service, blah, blah, blah. In some areas you're making money, in some other areas making less, or you're actually not making any money at all. What do you think? Take a while.
Some of the non-profitable initiatives might be awful though.
Exactly.
You can't get rid of it.
Exactly.
That can generate real profit making.
Yep. So not everything is profitable, and that's not the essence of this. Okay, you can't minimize costs or make sure that every activity is a profit-making activity, but you have to be aware of these costs. Okay, and these need to be conscious decisions that you make, rather than just be faced of costs within the different parts of the business without realizing why and how that all fits into the picture. Okay. Now, I just wanted to make a quick correction of what I said earlier. So I was just looking at the slide initially, very quickly. In terms of prepaid expenses, why are prepaid expenses part of current assets? Any of the accounting people able to answer this? I think I inadvertently say because you are expecting this money to come in. It's not money, it's usually prepaid expenses, so in relation to, let's say, a product. So you are expecting this product to come in, so it's as if you have a product there, but there's not necessarily physically there, but that's why you consider this as part of current assets. Now just moving forward, we cover all this. Gross profit margin. This is an example. Very similar to what we did before, so we actually have calculated that already, okay? But it just gives you the variable costs. So direct material cost is obviously a variable cost that relates directly to your sales. Labor cost can be variable. It depends on whether it's allocated to that particular function or whether it's an overhead salary, admin, let's say, okay? But you might have labor cost that's directly related to that particular function. Example? Any examples? Is that clear, or would you like for example, when your teachers come in or when I come in here, their cost, because they're paid by the hour, is directly related to them providing the service. Okay? Admin cost with this university is an overhead cost. Okay? So we have the total, let's say, variable cost in this particular instance is $65. Therefore, the gross profit is 35. 100 minus 65. Okay? And then your gross margin is this percentage, 35%. So what does that mean? It means for every dollar that you get coming in through the door, 35% of that is what is left after you have paid for the variable costs. You haven't taken into consideration the fixed costs as yet. Okay? Now what I wanted you to calculate is this. Okay? Say that we have these different cases of income coming in and these gross margins. So each one is a different case. What would be your, sometimes they call it gross margin in dollars, it's actually gross profit, okay? What would be your gross profit here if this was your gross margin? I will give you a couple of minutes. Go through the exercise, don't just look at it. completely different? No? Okay. Huh? Okay, so in all cases, just a very simple, I guess, way to illustrate to you that irrespective of how much turnover this business has, the gross margin will be dependent on, obviously, your gross margin as a percentage. So when you talk to people and they say, oh, I run a small business and it has yada, yada, yada turnover a year and what have you, that actually means absolutely nothing. Okay? So what you need to be focusing on is what is your gross margin, and then you want to increase your sales, provided that your gross margin will stay the same and will not start decreasing as a result of you increasing your sales. Okay? So, I just wanted to show you this little diagram. And let's put our critical thinking hats on. It's tiring and it's a difficult time of the day. Anyone that's able to explain to me what this means? So I'll just circle a number here. There we go. What does this stand for? What they've taught us in engineering at least is every diagram has to be self-standing. So it should not need any explanation from you.
I would say that you have an existing gross margin of 25%, and then if you reduce your price by 10%, you need an extra 76% volume increase in order to maintain
Yeah,
25%.
67.
67.
Yeah, exactly. Okay? So this little diagram shows you the power of the gross margin. Okay? Depending on the gross margin of your business, a 2%, let's say, price reduction might need you to sell anywhere from, okay, this is an extreme example, but let's say from 10 to 15% more volume to actually achieve the same gross profit, which is an interesting thing to consider. You know, when it comes to sales, when it comes to all these offers that we are constantly bombarded with, and when large businesses generally have these sales on, as a small business operator, when you try and match these, okay, or when you're actually making discounts and offers without actually realizing this, then you can run into a lot of financial trouble. Does that make sense? So why do you need to know your gross profit margin? Because then you can make financial decisions such as this in relation to pricing your products, in relation to your offers, your sales, what kind of discount do you offer to your loyal customers? Okay, depending how loyal are they and how much more business are they going to do with you? How much more are you expecting that you will increase your volume if you offer this price discount? Does that make sense? So you will have to be expecting an increase much more than this to offer the 10% discount if you only have a 25% gross margin. Is that clear for everybody? So a higher gross margin, obviously, so in this example here, we have gross margin is 50, allows more flexibility in your pricing strategies, okay? So if I ask you why in the exam, you will know how to answer this question. Okay. We've spoken about gross profit. Let's talk about break-even sales. What do you think break-even means? Break-even can mean different things to different parts of your business, okay? Or let's say not parts of your business, maybe at different stages of your business, okay? But when we talk about break-even sales, what would that mean? It's so straightforward that no one gets the answer.
Revenue sales is the same as the cost.
Yeah, so basically, how much money do you need how much product do you need to sell, how much revenue do you need to acquire to equal your cost of production, and say from that moment onwards, you start making money. So you have actually covered your fixed costs, okay? Not just the variable cost, but you've covered your fixed costs. you are making money based on the gross margin, okay? Because the variable costs are always going to be there, but you've covered your fixed costs, and from that point onward, that example of 35% gross profit margin means every additional dollar you're making, 35% of that is profit, okay? In another situation, break even, if we, let's say we're talking about investment, because we did like a little example with an investment sort of earlier, last week, or when you setting up a business, when you talk about the point where your investment breaks even, you actually obviously mean a different thing, correct? What would that mean? Say you're setting up a business and then ask you what is your break-even point? What do they mean by that? Yes, that's right. When you recoup your investment and your gradual operation cost, but when are you actually line zero when you have recouped that investment? Okay, so it's a same word, different concept. Okay. Now this is the formula that you see in your book and gives you the break-even point. Now I dislike formulas unless I completely can understand what the formula means. Okay. So I'm just going to give you a little example here of how I always think of this, even if you don't know the formula. Sometimes you can get quite confused by this percentage here. You go, well, does the 100 go? Does it go here? Does it go there? So a different way to do it, okay? Based on this formula, what is the break-even here? Does anyone know? Anyone? The other way to do it is this. What does this mean, gross margin? That for every $100 of sales, you make $30 gross profit, correct? The break-even is how many dollars of sales do you need to actually cover those $3,000 of fixed costs, okay? So if you apply the rule of 3, and I hope that everybody is familiar with the rule of 3, you go 3,000 times 100 divided by 30 to get this one, okay? So like your fellow students said, 10,000. Feel free to apply the formula. If this makes more sense for you, feel free to apply this, okay? I want the right answer. Okay. Say your break even, so we calculated, is $10,000, okay? You only make sales of 7,000. How much is your profit or loss? It's not much longer, it's only a couple of slides. So just focus and try to give the answer, because if you can give the answer now, you will be able to give the final exam very easily. If something like that happens. Who said that? You're close, but not quite. That's part of the answer, obviously, the $3,000. Anybody else?
6,000.
Okay, let's give it a go. Now, your sales of 7,000, you have a break-even of 10,000, okay? So, with your sales of 7, there's two ways to calculate it. One way is to say 30% of the 7,000 is 2,100. This is my gross margin. The 10,000 and 30%, this is my fixed costs. So I actually have not covered 900 out of my fixed costs. Does that make sense? Okay. The other way to do it is, okay, I have a shortfall of $3,000 to reach break even. So 3,000 is not actually your loss, okay? Multiply that by the gross margin and this gives you your loss. Make a note of this because I'm going to ask you one more thing, okay? So this is how you calculate it. This is, by the way, these solutions are not going to be on the PowerPoint online. So I guess an answer to what your fellow students said over there, why is your shortfall not the $3,000? Because if you have sales of 7,000, okay, yes, you need 3,000 to reach the break-even point, okay, but within that break-even point, there is some variable cost that you have not incurred with the $7,000 sales, okay? Okay. Accountants generally go like this, the rest don't really make much of a rule, I would think. But any confusion to this, please feel to email me after you have the time to digest and think about it, okay? Now, exactly the same example, I think. Yep, the givens are the same. Say you have sales of $15,000. This is now easier, okay? How much profit or loss are you going to have?
Would be 1,500 profit.
Very
Plus
good.
15 times 30% from your stuff.
Did anybody else get the same figure? So it's very similar to what we did before, or you can easily go, the excess over the break-even point is $5,000, okay? So if I take away my variable costs, so if I multiply by 30%, this is my net profit, because I've taken away my variable costs from that 5,000. Okay? So basically what this is saying is that you make $1,500 profit on sales of $5,000 over the break-even. Let me take the notes. Come again? Break even? So the break even, yes? Yes, the excess over the break even. Less your gross margin. That's the same thing. Yep. Your fixed costs have already been taken care of by the break-even point, I guess, when you calculate it this way. Yes, oh, there's different, of course there's different ways to think about it and calculate exactly the same thing. Yeah, and this is not the only way to do it, to apply the formulas. You can apply them in any order or sequence that you want. Yeah. As long as you end up with the same number, so obviously when you're rehearsing this, you can do it in a different way than this. As long as you end up with the same number, and when you do it makes sense, it's fine. Okay, ways to reduce your break-even. Obviously by cutting your fixed costs, okay, or by improving your gross profit margin. And I'm not going to get you to do this, but this is just another example that says if you increase your profit margin, what happens with your fixed costs, blah, blah, blah. So this is all in the slide, I'm pretty sure, or if it's not, it's exactly the same as the previous example. Okay, so this is just the last slide that I have with some calculations, and they're much easier than what we've done this far. So I'm just going to go ahead with this without making you do more work. What does this show us? We have an annual forecast of the different income and expenses. Okay? So if you are given, say, this, it's fairly straightforward to then calculate these projected profits. So what it says here, sales is the same as this. The goods or materials used, which is your variable costs, okay, will be 2 plus 3 minus 4. Wages or salaries is already given. variable cost, sorry, there's a variable cost, so this is just goods or materials so used. Variable cost, you need to add this plus the wages or salaries, and then you get your profit before fixed costs. Okay? So this can be given, or you can calculate based on some very simple calculations like this one. Okay? Gross profit margin is the gross profit of 56,000 over your sales, 25.9. So we've done this a number of times today. Fairly straightforward. If your gross profit is reached and your fixed costs don't change, then your break-even is calculated like this, which is again the same formula that we used. Break-even in this case turned out to be 80,000. How can we check our calculations when we do this very simple exercise, yet quite a few people, don't get it right? You can always check if you've got the break-even correctly. Do not forget this. You just go, this is my turnover, what I thought is my break-even. Let me multiply it with my profit margin and see if I get enough to cover fixed costs. There's obviously an extra zero here, okay? So it's 20,720. So basically what I'm saying here is, if I ask you for the break-even, make sure you check yourself whether you've done it correctly. Just multiply with the profit margin and see if you get the fixed costs. Does that make sense? Okay. And obviously when you do that in a real life setting, you can also look at break-even per month or per quarter. Is there somebody raising their hand there at the back trying to ask a question? No? Okay. Now, one key question. What is the key assumption that we have made here? Yep. So we basically made the assumption, what is constant? That your fixed costs do not change. Okay? Therefore, your break-even is constant. Okay? However, in real life, you can have different scenarios. Okay? So in this one, as your sales increase, so your volume of sales increases, your break-even actually reduces. How do we call this? Economies of scale, exactly. Okay? It's not always the case. This is what you hope for, generally speaking. In some cases, you do actually get the opposite. As your sales increase, your break-even also increases. You end up working more for less. Okay? That's why they call this manager easy based on that. I guess paper. And there's other scenarios. Okay, so the important thing to remember is that break-even, we don't just calculate it once and that's it. You have to monitor how this evolves as your business grows and as time goes by. Okay? So, principles of financial control. Measure your break-even regularly. Focus on getting the break-even down relative to sales and keep it obviously below sales. Reduce your break-even relative to sales by improving your gross margin or reducing your fixed costs. This is not always possible without reducing, let's say, the quality of service, or, I guess it also depends on the environment, on the environmental parameters, how much salaries are in today's day and age and how they increase incrementally. So you can not always reduce your fixed costs. In some cases, your fixed costs will keep going up and up. Okay? But how can we improve your gross margin? Any ideas? This is my last question and my last slide. How can you improve your gross margin? Anyone? Yes? 1 point, you can raise your price. How else can we do it? Come again? Reduce your variable cost. Thank you very much. These two I was expecting you to come just like that. And the third one is if you actually achieve a better mix of sales with higher contribution per product, depending on which products are the ones that have higher gross margins. Okay? If that makes sense. So if these products contribute more to my gross profit margin and this one less, let me focus on the ones that are more profitable. And avoid trying to increase sales by reducing prices. Okay? Because this usually leads to the previous example that we said, the busy fool. Not a very good strategy, especially for a small business. Thank you very much. Next week we have a guest presenter, and the following week after that we get a game. So we have a business consultant that's coming next week. She's very, very interesting. I urge you to come. And the week after that we have Adrian Schmidt sitting on the board of the business school. He's a very, very interesting Today we have with us Angie Spiteri. She's the founder and CEO of Time Equals Money. I've asked her to come today to share with you a bit of her personal story, how she actually went from government into private enterprise and how she set up her business from her perspective as a small business owner. But also what I found very interesting is what she actually does as a consultant to small businesses. But I asked her to also give us a bit of insight into that. So her view of small businesses and what works and what doesn't work. Okay, so like we normally do, Angie is going to address you and then we're going to have a chance for you to ask questions.
Okay, so I'm going to talk today about how to achieve great performance in a small business setting. And before I get into that, I just want you to imagine what it might be like if you had an extra 10 hours every single week. And this is during your business hours, not so that you actually slept less and did more. Just during, say, 8 to 4, if you could reclaim back an extra 10 hours a week, what would it actually mean to you and the results that you could possibly get? What would it even maybe mean to your life? Would you have more time to relax or exercise or just refuel rather than feeling that you're always robbing Peter to pay Paul, taking time from one area that you need to then pay back somewhere else? Would it make a difference to your actual results if you had that much extra time? Many of the people I work with are in this cycle of forever robbing Peter to pay Paul. They're frazzled. They can't think. They're rushing from one thing to the next. They're overwhelmed. There's always something else to do. They work really hard. In fact, too hard for my liking. Many of them wish there was an easier way. In fact, a lot of them have invested a lot of time and money to find an easier way. But for one reason or another, they don't stick to it. Either the solutions they got didn't suit them or their business, it was too hard to implement or maintain, or the common problem, they just didn't have time to actually put it into place. So what ends up happening is they end up wasting more time and more money. There's a statistic, don't call me on where I saw it or read it, but I know I read it, is that 75% of small businesses close because they're putting too much effort for the amount of money that they actually get back. The effort's too great for the return, the cost is too great for the return that they get, so they close their doors. There's lots of other reasons around that as well, but the biggest thing is what's it all for if you've got this dream for a small business and you're putting in all this effort and not getting a return equal to the effort that you're actually making. You may as well go work for somebody else. And it's their problem, they've got the headaches instead of you. So what I do, in a nutshell, is I help teams in usually medium to large organisations. I help them reclaim back 2.3 hours per day. That's what they tell me. On average, 2.3 hours per day. I help them eliminate time wasters. I help them get more time to spend on activities that actually help their bottom line. And they tell me that's around 42%. So we improve time spent on, increase time spent on activities that matter by 42%. But let me take you a little bit further back. So let me take a step back. I can't even believe I'm going to say this out loud because most of you aren't even this old. But 23 years ago, I started working for a large organisation. And within the few first months of starting to work there, I became known as Speedy. My nickname is Speedy Spiteri. And I got this nickname because of the amount of work I could do in comparison to my peers. And as you can imagine, I wasn't very popular with my peers. In fact, many of them said, slow down, because if you work this fast, we're not going to have any overtime on the weekend. So, I wasn't popular with them, but my bosses loved me. And over the next 17 years, I progressed up the ranks of this organisation, always wishing I could work for myself, never ever fitting in, even though I desperately tried to. When you're going to leave the government, you've got to have a really good reason to, especially for me. My parents are cleaners, and well, actually, that's not true. My father was a carpenter. He used to work for himself back in Malta on Maltese. And when we moved to Australia, though, with all the language, etc. barriers, they both started cleaning. My mum continued to clean until she retired. And my dad went on to become a general assistant in a school, and basically did all the carpentry that they needed and all the fixing, etc. that they needed. But neither of them worked for themselves again. And I always had this desire to work for myself, but didn't know what to do. I mean, I don't have a degree. I worked through the ranks with my bosses, actually, helping me get up. So, because I can't write or read in English very well either, so let me admit that right from the beginning. God, I can't believe I'm giving all my secrets away. So, anyway, I started working for I didn't actually. My last job in the tax office was as a coach, and I absolutely loved it. In fact, all my time through the tax office, what I was actually doing was performance managing. And my last position was that of a coach, and I absolutely loved it. It was as if I'm going to become a coach, I'm going to become a life coach. It was just starting back then, life coaching and business coaching. So I went off, and when I was pregnant at the time, and after I had my son, I went off and I did a course. I found a course that said you could finish in 3 months, and it was nationally accredited. Not many of them were back then, so I went off and I did this course, and I finished in 3 months. I handed up all my paperwork, and it took them longer to market than it did for me to actually do it. And they were very concerned that a lot of their students weren't actually finishing the course. In fact, most of the people I started with 10 years ago haven't finished it. So they asked me to write a time management course because they figured I had a few techniques that maybe might be useful to some other people, especially because at the time I had a newborn, and my dad was actually passing away at that point, so I was really helping my parents quite a lot, taking them to hospital, etc. So I wrote this time management course, and thank God they actually asked me to do this because it gave me my niche. And all the way through this actual course, they're saying to you that you've got to have a niche. Otherwise, it's very hard to market yourself. So that was 10 years ago. 9 years I opened up for business. I was actually called Generating Time back then, but we rebranded a couple of years ago, and it's now Time Equals Money. And while I was actually starting to work for myself, I became fascinated with this notion of having it all. Was it possible, especially as a woman, is it possible to have all the family, the career, the business, if you want to be in business, etc. And as I started working with different companies, etc., it dawned on me that people are very, very good at what they do. They've usually done many years of study and then on-the-job training to actually do what they do. But not a lot of people have ever been shown how to work. It doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. And especially in this day and age, where things are coming at us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there's no stopping those emails or phone calls or, texts. Nothing stops it. They just sort of pile up if you're not paying attention. So, and a lot of people that have gone to time management courses or learned how to actually work, learned from people who didn't grow up in this day and age. So they're learning from people who didn't actually even have that sort of a background. So anyway, what I decided to do was specialise in these areas. So what we help people with over these 9 years, as I said, is about reclaiming time, about aligning their business activities to the goals that they have at the end, and helping them with common business processes like meetings, emails, delegation, working as a team, etc. But we do this in a particular way that's very, very practical and very, very, it just gives you the essentials. In fact, our whole program is called Essentials, because it's only when you specialise in time management, not in leadership, but in time management, that you can get these little distinctions that really help people. And most of our business comes through repeat business, so people getting us in over and over again to train more of their teams or their new people. And most of our business also comes from word of mouth. And the reason why people refer us and get us back in is because of three reasons. One is if we don't hit the objectives that we say we're going to hit, we'll give you your money back, or we won't get paid. One of the two things. So people feel a bit relieved that they don't have to fork over money unless they actually get some results. And not a lot of training organisations will actually do that because their outcomes aren't measurable. The other thing is that our results are instant and they're visible. We want to make a big impact instantly on the work environment, so people can see that we've been there. And the last thing is, as I said, everything's practical. In fact, the way we deliver our training is that at the end of the workshop, which is only a couple of hours long, we actually help people put into place what's relevant. So when we leave, there's actually nothing further to do. And in fact, it always hurts my brain when I hear people say that they got one thing out of a training program. It's a waste of time if you only come away with one thing. You know, you should have a big difference to your life, but most people don't have the time to then apply what they've learned because they go back to a big backlog of voicemail and emails and post-it notes and, you know, questions that people have banked up for them to actually answer. So we help actually an immediate return on investment because we help them implement straight away. So there's no getting out of it. You've got to use what we say straight away. So they're the reasons why people employ us. And we work with people for 3 to 6 months, really hoping their managers actually help their teams, because it's these poor managers that are caught in the middle, getting it from every angle, so they suffer the most in all honesty. But anyway, what do I typically see happening in small business settings? Now, I used to work with a lot of small businesses when I first started, and of course I'm a small business owner myself, so I feel I've got a good vantage point of giving this point of view. But from my observations, there's about 6 things that I think that are key. Key things that I've seen anyway. The first one is that many people just don't know how to drive all their projects to closure in and around business as usual. In fact, most of their time is spent on low priority stuff and questions. So other people's work, basically. And they don't tend to spend a lot of time, even just doing one thing, to actually move their projects along. So a lot of people do very sophisticated project planning courses. In fact, they invest a lot of money and time in these courses because they're usually quite lengthy. But you know, if the person on the ground is doing something every single day to move those projects forward, to track them and have an easy way to track and manage them, then those plans are for nothing. And in fact, there's a statistic, and you've probably seen this one, that 71% of projects actually fail. And the reason why they fail, the underlying reason is poor communication and poor planning. Because you can't communicate if you don't have a day-to-day plan, a good day-to-day plan. You're not inspecting what you're actually wanting. So that's the first one. The second one is that many business owners and managers are stretched really thin. They're all entrepreneurial, most of them, so any shiny little object that flashes past their line of vision, they go for, you know. Or they, you know, flip off to somebody else to go for. They don't want to miss out on what that opportunity might give them. So they stretch themselves really thin, and I think that's also around not critically assessing whether that new opportunity is the best way to be going or to be putting on your plate right this second. They don't have their plans, you know, up in front of their faces a lot. They're usually buried away in the computer somewhere. So they're stretched very thin and distracted by shiny objects. The third one is, and it goes hand in hand with point 2, is that many managers actually struggle to delegate and to build a successful team. usually tell somebody else how to do it, so they decide they'll do it, and then they realise they don't have time to do it, so they give it to somebody else to do at the last second with insufficient communication and assistance. And of course then it just goes pear-shaped, and they don't get what they want, so that means that they then have to go back and do it, which just, keeps the process going around again and again. There's keys to communicating before you delegate, and they're really simple: before, during and after. So make sure that you get what you want. But what tends to happen is managers, if they're going to delegate, they either aren't kept informed of what actually is happening with that particular job, so they're always chasing, hunting the person down, trying to get an update, or they're over-informed and they're, drowned in CC emails with all this insignificant information, so they don't end up reading them until, of course, something goes wrong and then a whole crisis happens. So the other thing that also happens when they delegate is they either don't inspect at all or they inspect too much, which means that nothing actually happens unless they rubber stamp it. So it relies on them for input. So that's point number 3. Point number 4 is that employees think that their workload is their problem, not their managers. They are scared. Maybe that's not the right word, but I think they're really worried about speaking to their managers about their workload. They feel that that workload is theirs to do, and they should know what the priorities are. And in fact, the number one reason people go to a time management course is because they want to learn how to prioritise it out. They don't know what they should actually concentrate on in amongst all these conflicting priorities. What they end up doing is they end up suffering in silence. They work long hours. They take work home with them. And this, in some organisations, is seen as a badge of honour. It's actually seen as a great employee, somebody really loyal and takes work home, doesn't mind putting in extra hours. But what actually happens is when it's consistent, it leads to errors. It leads to overwhelm, burnout, accidents, disengagement, turnover. People leaving because why did I work all those hours and they can go do something else? And of course, the same problem happens again. But not to mention missed targets and missed deadlines, missed profits. Now, I'm sure the boss would want to know if there was a way that they could help you to do your workload, but most people don't talk to them. And most people don't talk to them because they don't quantify their workload. They don't have it in one central location, so they can actually have a good conversation with somebody, so they can actually prioritise. Number 5, many people have a hard time focusing. And maintaining their focus. And in fact, a lot of our technology is set up by default to distract us and interrupt us and, make us addicted to urgency, so we feel like we've got to, answer things immediately as it comes in. And lastly, many people I work with, they're working on half throttle. And what I mean by that is that they're continually switched in, plugged in, switched on. There's no downtime for them. They eat on the run. They don't sleep well. They get up tired. They don't exercise. They don't fuel up. What I call fuel up, physically and mentally. And there's a report, a Hewitt report. They found that less than 50% of us are engaged in our work. And you think about that next time if you ever go for an operation or to the dentist, that your dentist or your doctor may not actually be having a good day that day, might not be fully engaged in what they're doing. So this lack of engagement is usually due to fatigue and burnout. And the results that we get are usually tied in with how we're feeling, whether we're feeling tired or feeling full of energy. So there is a direct impact on this. So, given all of this, how does a small business owner have great results in a small business setting? Any ideas? I can ask you guys before I tell you what I think. Is there anybody awake? It's like a stare off. Somebody's going to talk to. Any ideas? structure to be able to frame that communication. But yes, you're right, good communication is key. What else do you think?
Really figuring out your core business and how everything else relates back to that thing that you're trying to do.
Essential. In fact, that is really key.
Daily goals and setting like what needs to be done today and make sure that you either hit your targets or measure them and adjust to the next day.
And in fact, when I work with people, I recommend they always plan a week at a time. Because when you're planning daily, what actually happens is that you increase your reactivity. Because all you seem to be doing is dealing with what's coming up rather than taking a step back and thinking, out of everything I've got to do, what must I do this week? But there's a trick to this, because you can't overplan. Otherwise, because those things that you're talking about, the things that come up every day, happen regardless of whether we're planning or not. So you've got to leave some space to actually accommodate it. Yeah, planning is key. And we have another person over here.
A good reliable team.
Good, reliable team. Yes. And that's like a walk and talk almost. You know, you've got to be a boss that actually inspires that and gives some rope for people to be able to think and contribute rather than giving them too much rope or not enough rope. If that is clear. Any other thoughts? Out of your misery hole, let's hear what I think. I think that it's actually very simple. In fact, it's common sense. You know what? Whenever I deliver a training program, people say to me, that was just common sense. That was good common sense. And you know, in my experience, common sense isn't very complex. So, and this, sorry, I didn't catch your name, but yes, you hit it on the head there. To be able to actually get great results in any business environment is the main thing you need to do is to do less. You need to do a whole lot less. And the only way you can do a whole lot less is if you are actually very, very clear on who your target market is and what your business goals are. So out of everything that you could possibly be doing, what's really wildly important, what's really specific to your target market. If you're not clear on your target market, and a lot of small business owners are not, they're scared to niche because they're scared they're going to lose money. And what actually happens is, I don't know if you've heard this story, this saying, but the riches are in the niche. So the more specific you are, the more business you actually get, because you are talking the talk of those particular people. So that's the first thing. The other thing is if you've got a team of people, if contractors or actual employees that work with you full-time or part-time, whatever, you've got to let them do what you want them to do. So rather than piling more things onto their plate, your job actually is to get rid of things that slow them down. That's what I think a manager's job is. To get rid of hindrances and irritants. In fact, most top performers are top performers because the first thing they do in any position is get rid of the things that slow them down. And they don't care if people think they're rude or ruthless, they get results. Whereas nice, kind, Jane or Tom, who helps everybody, they're seen in a different light entirely. So, help your people clear the path for them is the second thing, I think. And the last thing is to learn how to work. You cannot be effective with your time if you are not efficient first. And likewise, you can be hitting 100 things on the head, but if nothing of them are of high value, then you're still wasting your time. Efficiency and effectiveness are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. And they are our most precious resource. Because if we're wasting either of those, then we're wasting our energy too. So I think until people, and this has to come from the top down, because there's no point in getting your team efficient and effective if you're the pain, if you're the broken spoke, and you're the boss. It's all for nothing. It's just a waste of time if you train others and not yourself. But unless people start realising that these are most precious resources, they're just always continually target market. That saves so much time, so much money, especially for small business owners. Are there any questions at all that you'd like to ask? Or have I given all my secrets away? Yes?
When you talk about the 6 billion, like the first one was focus,
Yes?
technology, how do you like fix that? What's the steps to manage that?
I think the steps are working out what your actual business needs, rather than actually being drawn into whatever is hot for the moment. So for example, LinkedIn versus Facebook. You know, when social media first emerged and they became popular, you know, like it wasn't just your first early adopters that took it on board, it was basically everybody thought they needed to take it on board. Everybody started to do both, because it wasn't clear as to what you needed. So you're investing all this time, not really quite knowing what you're doing, not comfortable with what you're doing both. When really, Facebook is business to consumer, not business to business. So you don't need to be doing both if that's not your niche. So I think it's working out what your business needs. And I deal with a lot of people who are continually in a state of incompetence because they're just getting the newest thing, the newest tool, the newest thing. So they're always just half using, well, not even half, I wish I could say half, like 5% using whatever they've got before they even switch to get the next thing because somebody told them that that was what they needed to do. So yeah, so that, but also things like if you know how to use your tool, then you know how to actually help get it to help it work. So very simple things like switching off your alerts so that while you're actually trying to work, you haven't got your envelope flying in every 5 seconds telling you, you know, somebody's asked you to come for a coffee and you're trying to focus on getting some assignment done, you know. So just simple little things to actually help you keep it at bay. But what it's actually training is, and what most organisations are very, very reactive. They're just running. I don't know why. I don't think they know why. Any other? Yes.
Question. I'm helping my dad with his small business, and many of the things you said, like about burnout and lack of communication, delegation stuff, is really relevant to that business. And I was just wondering, like, for someone who's involved with a small business in sort of like an indirect way, how would be the best way to help someone grow their business and sort of have those sort of strategies? Like, what's the easy first steps that you can take?
I think the easiest is to firstly maybe get away for just even half a day. Even on the, I mean, if they're embroiled in small business, they might only be able to do that on the weekend. Luckily, your whole family serves. But just to be clear on what actually is the goal, and really to help them critically assess everything that comes in. You know, before we do that as well, is it really going to get us to, is it going to take us towards our goal or move us away? And get that goal up so people can see it. And really start to, and get that public language. Is that going to move us away? Because what we do as a culture is we tend to, we love action, but we don't sit back and think a bit before we take that action. So what actually happens is there's a whole lot of rework and miscommunication and, you know, going backwards and forwards and errors before we actually go forward. Whereas if we actually spent some time maybe really getting clear first and planning, then going forward is a much easier or straighter path. So two things is there's more time thinking, even if it's just a regular sort of thing. But sticking with it's the biggest, like making them stick to it. So once a week or once a fortnight, we're going to sit down and we're going to strategize for the next 2 weeks. Or once a week, we're going to report on how we went this week and we're going to plan the week ahead. And we're going to do that together because it's easier when you, like, is it your dad or your mum? Or?
My dad.
Yeah. And excuse my terminology because again, remember English is not my first language. So it's when you're in it, you can't see the forest through the trees or the trees through the forest. You know that saying? Because you're just too in it. You need somebody else to talk to. And getting somebody to actually stop you from taking action in small business is usually one of the things that you really need. It's not taking action, it's the opposite. And actually reporting, keeping accountable on what you said you were going to way do you get it done? What are we going to do? What specifically? What do we need to tell the team we're doing? And working in 90-day cycles is far enough ahead to actually see a result, but not too far that it hasn't got that urgency. But when we work in longer, then we feel, oh, I've got plenty of time, or do we just lose the actual bullseye? Is that right? There's a little thing that I share with business owners, particularly small business owners. It's called impact and ease. Every shiny object that comes in your way, you've got to put it on this axis of impact and ease. Where does it actually sit? And the ones that you're wanting to go for, of course, are the easiest and the most impactful, rather than everything. But that cuts out a lot of the ideas when you do it on that sort of an axis.
Do you have just give 2 case studies if you've got them for your last 2 points, get everyone to slowly work this down and how to work? Just to relate that back like a real world example.
So, sorry, say that again. The case studies, I've got that. Examples on which ones?
On the last 2 points.
On how to slow down your people.
Yeah, and also how to work.
Yeah, well, that one's easy. That's how to slow down your people. A boss will come in. Actually, I'll give you a family example. Oops. My dad, bless him, he would say, oh, I'd like to do this. So he'd say it to me, he'd say it to my brother. Meanwhile, both of us have rushed off and tried to find how to do that. He's gone cold on the idea. He's even forgotten he's even said it. Meanwhile, both of us separately have tried to help him. And this is constantly what bosses do. An idea might come across their mind. They'll talk to one person. That person, because it's the boss, they think that they want them to do it. So they'll pour that on somebody else. They'll talk to somebody else. They'll think that they want them to do it. They'll tell 10 people, they send an email to 10 people. You know, who's supposed to do it? Everybody or no one? So, yeah, so they give them something. They say, this is our plan. This, I've got to go with it. Here's another, they go, this is the plan for the year. It normally comes out around October. You know, we start in July, you know, the financial year. Here's the plan for the year. Look at it in our computer, so we don't even cross it, that doesn't cross our mind. And let's do this, and oh, I saw this funding. Oh, and there's this community thing on. Let's go into that. And oh, there's this and there's that. The person doesn't even know if they're after a master. They're just trying to cope with whatever they've got. Meanwhile, they're trying to catch up with 200 emails that they've had because they've had to travel. And so that's an example of real daily life in any organisation, not just small business. And the last one, which one was the other one example? Learn how to work. Okay, so this is again very typical. Most people will use their inbox as a storage box, a to-do list, a trash can, a new mail, to receive new mail, basically everything other than what it's actually for. Your inbox is just like your letterbox. You don't, well I hope, that's if any of you go to collect mail, because somebody else might do it for you. At the end of the day, when you go to collect your post out of your letterbox, you don't open it at your letterbox and then stick it back in because you've got something that you might do with it later. You take it all out of your letterbox and you take it inside, and you might put some in the bin, you might put it, wherever it needs to go, but the last thing you do is leave it in your letterbox. Because what actually happens if you leave it in your letterbox, then you don't know what's due when. You've got to read things over and over again to make sure you don't miss a deadline. But no, what normally happens is you do miss a deadline. So this is how people treat their inbox, and their inbox is for one reason only. It's to collect new mail. So that when you go to clear your inbox, basically you're clearing everything that's happened that you weren't aware of, and you're deciding when that needs to go. Are you going to get it done with a surgeon? Are you going to do it later? If so, when? Are you going to just ditch it? Do you need to forward it? What needs to happen with it, basically? The whole purpose is to clear it, to make a decision, move it on to its next logical step. But what most people do is they leave it in their inbox. And there's a statistic that says we handle things between 6 to 12 times before we actually do something with it. If you've got 200 emails in your inbox and you've got 200 coming in the next hour, try to get that work done in a week. Well, we could have 80 months worth of work on it. If you're serious about getting something done, you need to decide what's the next step and get that scheduled into your calendar so you've got, you know how much time you've got left. But these aren't simple, these aren't the way people work. You know, people are struggling. They just need simple systems and they're trying to find them, but they don't find me. Yes.
Do you place a big emphasis on diarising things all the time, or do you think that efficient people are able to put things in their head and work on their head? Does that make sense?
No, I don't think that's efficient. In fact, I think the brain can cope with about 7 things, like juggling 7 things, but not in any particular order. So have you been reading something and then you read a word and you think, oh, that's right, I didn't do that, I said I was going to do that. So you leave whatever you're reading and you go off and you do the thing that you said you were going to do, and you come back, and where do you start reading from? Anyone? From the top. Thanks. So you read that page again and you get another, oh yeah, that's right, I thought I was trying to do that, that's right, I must get, and off you go again. Have you ever tried to concentrate and all these ideas keep flooding your mind as to what you said you were going to do, what you need to do, what you want to follow up? The only way to be really efficient and effective is to use your calendar. Because if you're not using one tool to actually quantify how much work you've got, when you're going to do what, what's first, what's second, then you're just going to be always chasing your tail. So yeah, I really recommend using a diary, using a calendar of some sort. Because it's a sequence. But you see, what half the people do is they say project X instead of actually the next step. So they put off project X because that's too big. I've got no time to do that. Instead of actually just doing the next step. Is this making sense?
Can I ask a question next? Do you have a longer delegation and after delegation? That's actually one of the things that people in that HR can do. I think it's really difficult to provide. What is your work assessing and assisting with this business owners?
I always say that there's 4 rules of thumb in delegation. There's many others, but these are key. The first one is reporting. You've got to agree on when that person is actually going to report to you how the project is going. And you might, depending on how your experience of working with that person and their experience with the job, will affect how often and how frequently they actually get back to you. So if it's somebody who you can't rely on, that never gets the job done, you're going to talk to them a bit more. And if it's somebody that you know the job is done the second you've given it to them, then you don't need to talk to them at all. But you need to make that overtly say. The other thing is repeatable. If it's repeatable, it's a great thing to delegate. If they can do that job 70% of what you can do it, they're a great person to delegate to. Tell them when you want it by. And one of my best mentors always says to me, there's always 2 questions you need to ask when somebody gives you a job. It's when do you want to buy and when do you really want to buy? Because there's always 2 answers. So they're just little rules of thumb that really can actually make a big difference. There's about 8 points or 10 points on actually making it a really great delegation. But most people, they don't inspect what they've delegated. They just hand it off and they look at the last second. Yes. Yeah, because they don't track it. They don't put it in their diary to track and monitor. Yes?
And you mentioned earlier on about reacting to particularly to technology, anything rather than actually being proactive. There was an article in the weekend's paper about something from the UK who's over here at the moment was experimenting with different things and actually only answered emails on Friday just to see what happened. He wasn't advocating that you should do that, but he wanted to see what would happen if you
your matter is urgent, this is what you need to do. So it's just communication. But how many of us have, or if you've worked, how many of you go into a work environment and they tell you this is how we help each other to work? Not many. It's just a free-for-all. And everybody's got their own ideas. So yeah, just look at it less. Will help you reclaim up to 3 hours a day. I love email because it batches low priority. If you've emailed me, that means that I can reply to you when I look at my email. Not instant. Sometimes you might be lucky, you might get an instant reply from me. But don't expect one because you've emailed me. So I think the problem here is the problem with most humans. We just love to be distracted. Everything trains us not to actually concentrate. In fact, if I get two emails on the same subject, I call. Most times when I'm making appointments, if I try once, twice, and then I try call if it's getting too hard. Unless that person it's easier to actually email them and go backwards and forwards. But I find also that people aren't very clear when they email. So they leave things unanswered. So yeah, when it's unclear or something, we're going to go backwards and forwards, I just give them a call. There's a few. There's looking for information that they already have. Most people don't know how to use the search function on any Outlook tool. Most people file their electronic information like they file paper because that's how they were taught to file. So looking for information that they already have, reducing reactivity, answering and reading emails, stress, multiple handling, interruptions is massive. They save lots of time with interruptions. But they all link into one another. It's all reactive, all these things. So if they manage these key time wasters, then basically they reduce reactivity and they increase productivity.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you very much. That was very inspiring and eye-opening in that sense. I think, a lot of people sort of found examples in our work life and daily life that we can certainly relate to. I very much liked that a lot of the things that Angie has mentioned today, we've also discussed about the importance of knowing what your core business is and your target market. The other one she mentioned about letting actually people do the work, which we're going to probably do in the next few lectures. I've got a little something for you for Small Business School. This is a letter from our head of school thanking you for today, because now does include money. Thank you very much, and a bottle of wine. We'll take a 5-minute break and we'll be back. Angie's story, I thought it was interesting because not, her consulting part of the business, that one as well, but her story as an entrepreneur herself, I think resonates with some of the things that we've said in this class. Did you notice anything that sort of rang a bell? The things that we have discussed at all?
Small business owners often try and do everything. They don't delegate. Well, sometimes they
Stretched. I also thought of her own target market, how she said that everyone is in the niche market it's an important chapter, an important part of this unit, small business growth, and quite a key chapter for the exams as well. Okay, so this is a little slide and a graph that sort of shows, I guess, the rate as to which businesses usually grow. So it's not a straight line. It's not a linear growth. Does this graph remind you of something that we have talked about or have seen in the past, last couple of lectures? Sorry? Yes, exactly. So whether it is a product we're talking about, whether it is a business we're talking about, this life cycle concept actually comes from ecology, organism. So, and it's basically seen even from the kind of terminology that we use, survival, growth, decline, maturity, sort of decline. And basically what this says is that growth is not going to be consistent. You're going to get periods of time where growth is going to be higher, and then it will sort of even up towards your maturity stage. And then whether we talk about businesses or products or product lines, it is important to be able to identify those stages so you can, when you're reaching your maturity stage, you make basically a critical decision. Are you ready to stay in this business? Do you want to exit? Are you capable of innovating and taking it to the next level? So you actually then maybe experience, let's say, another growth phase after that. Just like product growth, so you can actually pivot into another diagram that follows this afterwards. So these are the kind of questions that you need to ask in a business, and you need to be able to monitor your growth to be able to know exactly where you stand in those graphs. Next Monday, we are going to get Adrian Finney. Adrian Finney is going to address you, who is a very big name in, let's say, Perth space and property. He started property. He's a sort of a serial entrepreneur, and these are some of the things that he will talk about. So it's actually, I found a very interesting example of someone from real life that actually talks about life cycle theories with products and businesses, and how this kind of thinking, because he actually came to UWA, he was a business student at UWA prior to working in the private sector, and how this kind of thinking can actually help you differentiate yourself from others out there by trying to apply these kind of concepts in real life, okay? So true growth obviously does not always follow these graphs, and it's less steady and can be more lumpy at times. Okay, and if you grow too fast, you might be placed at risk rather than be able to basically reach those levels of growth. So what we will be addressing today is how can you achieve growth without putting yourself in extreme financial risk, and how can you manage this process? What are the critical functions within the business that you have to address to be able to grow, should you actually wish to? So not all businesses, like we've said, wish to grow, okay? A lot of small firms just seek to survive, stay small, and this can be a conscious decision, okay? But should you decide you want to grow, what are the kind of areas that you need to be focusing on? Okay, there are a number of different frameworks that you can use, a number of different theories as to which are these stages of small business growth. This is just one of them. But what I like about this one is that it really relates it with exactly what we discussed before, delegation and the ability of leaders to either do the work themselves or delegate effectively so the business can grow. Okay? So it really takes you through those stages, and this is in your book, and it's explained thoroughly, so I won't go through each and every one in huge detail, but all I'm saying is as you move from this stage to a division organization, which is, let's say, a very large organization with separate divisions and top-down, let's say, hierarchical type of management, how you move from a a single direct supervisor to someone that has different supervisors, but they're still the person that is able to supervise everybody's work, okay? To then a stage where you have indirect control. So basically yourself, you cannot possibly supervise everybody in the business know exactly what they're doing. You have to have indirect control to that divisional and large, very large organization. So small to medium-sized enterprise will usually lie in these two phases, I find, from experience, and potentially this stage as it grows to a medium to larger size organization. It's interesting that we have as the business grows, and this is an interesting diagram. I'm not sure how this is done. I just have to put up with it. Basically, what this slide is trying to say, and it may not be graphically very easy to understand as you see it, is that as the business is growing, profitability would not increase, let's say, will not always increase, but as you reach a certain stage, the profitability will retrench. So your size is not retrenching. So as you reach this stage, you might decrease your profitability instead of manage to increase it by size. So the key challenge here is as you grow, when you monitor your profitability effectively, and you start to see that the growth starts to impede on your profitability, and you start having a challenge, reduce productivity, reduce profit, reduce gross margins. How do you overcome that? And it's really a management function that will allow you to do that. Okay? So, and we will talk about the key functions of management that you need to be focusing on to achieve that profitability growth as your business is growing. This is another interesting framework, again from your book, which breaks it down to 5 different phases. And then again, the key aspect here is the style of leadership and how do you actually move from the initial phases of business owners that are very entrepreneurial, very creative, they basically take control and they do everything themselves, to starting to direct teams, to then effectively delegating all the way to achieving teams with high level of collaboration. And in the respective chapter, when we talk about HR and small businesses, we will discuss these aspects of how do you create highly effective teams. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is this is an important framework, but when you're reading this, it's interesting to draw connections between the different chapters in your book. Okay? So whereas this is talking about growth, like small business growth, it's obviously a connection here with delegation, so strategy, but also HR and leadership in the small business context. Okay? And it talks about the different crises that you go through. Now, obviously, yet again, this is a theoretical framework. So when you see these things, it doesn't mean that they always follow this, that path, that all of these are always experienced, okay? But in many cases they are. So they're interesting tools from a theoretical perspective to help you think and potentially identify. Say if you are in a business and it's experiencing a certain crisis, then if you can relate to that and you've actually seen it in paper, then you possibly know how to manage it and what is it really that you need to do in that case. Or is it related to the management function and the level of delegation of the business, okay? And this one breaks those different categories, so in sort of in different phases into the actual, let's say, different categories and functions within the business, and characterizes them as you move from creativity, where you have very informal, let's say, organizational structures, all the way to teams and highly structured work entrepreneurial owner, all the way to increasing delegation. And as you can see here, some of the aspects about what Angie was discussing today, interesting points come up in this framework. So you can delegate, but then as these businesses grow, you commonly identify and you see businesses where they grow, they aim to delegate, they start to delegate, but then they reach a crisis where they actually need to draw everything back, and the owner or the people in charge become more of the watchdog that they have to consolidate. Okay? So this is no longer usually it's not necessarily experienced in a small to medium-sized business. It's more for the larger businesses that they reach that stage, they've grown, and then suddenly they realize that they've over-delegated, and someone comes along and tries to increase not efficiency, but consolidate all the different divisions so that they can become more productive. So I'll give you an example of our everyday example here at the university. This is the kind of stuff that we are experiencing at the moment. So I'm not sure how involved you are in, the university structures and restructures, okay? But they are consolidating different functions, centralizing them so they can actually achieve higher productivity. Okay? So these kinds of frameworks can apply from anywhere to a very small to a very large organization. Okay, there's a number of different factors that influence growth from a strategic perspective, the owner, but also business-related factors. And we talk about financial resources, HR, planning and control. Now, growth obviously involves risk, and here is some of the key functions that need attention when we talk about growth. Management, strategic planning, finance. And I think this is a very interesting paper and rating of these key functions that need focus in order to achieve effective growth. So you see profitability is on the top, so is management and HR. So yet again, some of the things that we will refer to in the HR chapter, if there is a question on small business growth, or what you need to achieve small business growth, strategy is important, but also the ability to manage staff effectively. Okay, so the kinds of things that Angie was talking about today as well. So profitability, enhance profits and turnover, and as I said before, being able to track your profitability as you're growing, so you can identify when you're retrenching, and then you try to identify the reasons why, and any strategies you need to implement to either understand that this is going to take place for a period of time, so it's like an investment that you do, or how do you need to remedy and improve that. Management skill, okay? This issue of delegation, hands-on versus hands-off managing and learning to communicate with your employees, so we heard a lot about on this today. It's a very difficult thing to learn, in my experience. You just get business owners that are very, very good with delegation, and you can also get people that are very centralized and they need to do it themselves, or they delegate